In today's episode, I interview Robert Faltermeier. He is the Director of Innovation at Jeppe High School for Boys. During the interview, we chat about innovation. What does it mean when schools innovate? And the fact that, the world is changing very quickly. And we saw with COVID-19 and the imminent lockdown from it, how schools had to adapt in the last moment. So we had a chat about what happened prior to COVID-19 with Jeppe Boys High School, and then specifically how they adapted to emergency online teaching and what the road is going ahead forward. What does that look like? So we had a chat about that, but also Robert mentioned his love of storytelling and the different apps that he uses in specific Google Tour Builder, but then also the subsequent changes to it. So an extremely interesting interview. I can't wait for you to hear this one. Tell me what you think of this interview on the social media platform of your choice. Being a teacher is tough, especially now. That's why we need to motivate, inspire, and support each other. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Super Teachers Unite show and learn from the expert guests we have every week. Hi, my name is Francois Nordia and I am a super teacher, and this is Super Teachers Unite, the show all about motivating, inspiring and supporting teachers. And with me today, I've got super teacher of note, Robert Faltermeier. He is the Director of Innovation at Jeppe Boys High School here in Johannesburg. Robert, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Francois. It's great to be here. It's awesome. I won't lie.
And it's such a long time coming. We've been trying to have a chat online for the last, I almost want to say, month, because we were scheduled,
definitely.
Yeah, we were scheduled to do a little bit for Schoolscape IT earlier in August, and we'll get into the details of why that didn't happen. And then we tried to do another interview, but then load shedding hit us. But like third time's the charm. We are here. We are ready to do this interview and learn from everything that you've got going on. So
number 3 is a lucky number. I won't lie. It was a bit disappointing when we got hit with Eskom's load shedding, but it's good to finally to get to chat.
And here we are. But before we jump into today's episode, for everybody that would like to be part of our live studio audience, send your name to me on WhatsApp to the following number, to +27 63 681 6410. I'm just going to repeat that. +27 63 681 6410, and you can be invited to be a guest when we do these live interviews, and you can interact with me and my guest and participate in the awesomeness that it is being a super teacher. But today's episode is brought to you by GoTeach. GoTeach is the brand new platform focused on assisting teachers in getting employment. If you're an unemployed teacher, a student teacher, or even a retired teacher, go check out goteach.co.za. The mission is to assist teachers in finding employment. And the first port of call is going to look at how can we assist schools who need to find teachers at short notice. So go on over to goteach.co.za. Have a look at what we're doing there. I'm very excited. I think I can say this now. Probably by the time this airs, people will, we would have grown. But within the first day of us launching, we managed to reach 1,900 teachers signing up on the platform. I'm extremely excited to see what we can do for our teachers and employment in general, because of where we need to start is empowering teachers to be super teachers so they can get the jobs that they want. So that is it. Go check out goteach.co.za. But let's get into today's interview. Robert, now let's chat about the fact that we couldn't have our chat during Schoolscape IT because you were rushed to hospital. Tell us what happened there.
Yes, on the morning I was supposed to do the interview, I suddenly came down in a lot of pain, ended up rushing off to the casualty. Long story short, it ended up being a kidney stone, but for a very odd reason. So I actually had COVID earlier in the year. Ended up spending 9 days in hospital, and according to the urologist who saw me, this is, believe it or not, is a thing, that to help treat with COVID and a whole lot of things, a lot of special treatments are given, and one of them was vitamin C drips. and excessive vitamin C apparently promotes kidney stones. So even though I had shaked the COVID for 2 months, everything was fine. The powers that be in the universe said things aren't going to work today, so ended up having a kidney stone. So hence why we couldn't chat the first time.
And it's so, I want to say, it's so apt that we chat about this, because we are going to talk about the fallout from COVID and the things that happened to schools and how schools adapted to COVID, and specifically how you and your school adapted to it. But on a personal level, I mean, this is something you didn't foresee, and I'm assuming it changed your life.
So yeah, I mean, me and my family were very lucky in a lot of ways. It wasn't too bad. Yes, I was hospitalized, but still came off a lot better than a whole lot of other people. I mean, it is a serious thing. I think people need to definitely take it seriously. But as you say, it's also about how it affects one. I mean, I think one needs to adapt to this change and sort of work appropriately. And that sort of will probably lead into what we're going to talk about later on today, about how we as a school adapt and how teachers have to adapt. And I think part of that is also one's mindset and how one sees things and how one acts and sort of belief in that things can get better and you can make changes and adapt for the right reasons.
Yeah, Robert, I'm for one glad that it wasn't as serious for you as it was for many other people. But we can't neglect the fact that our teachers, and we will have teachers, and we didn't have teachers in South Africa that fall ill or fell ill with COVID, and with who it didn't go as fortunate as it went with you. But if we don't look after our teachers on a personal level, and we don't understand the impact of COVID on a personal level, we can't even start to look at it as a systemic issue for schools.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's important to note that a lot gets said about how got to be involved with the students, which is important. I mean, that's our primary task as educators, and even go so far as to say a moral responsibility to actually make sure that we're giving the best that we can for them. But I think sometimes we need to realize that we are people too. And if we are happy, we are healthy, we are focused, that will automatically translate into the benefit of our students, which is our primary goal, our vocation for what we're actually doing. And hopefully some of that can be shared with other amazing teachers that are out there in South Africa and the differences they're actually making.
So let's go back to, I almost want to say 3-4 years ago before COVID, because it does feel like it's like 2020 consists out of like probably 4 years worth of time, because it just
January, February, March, and now, the rest of it sort of is a blur, as it were.
Exactly. What was teaching like, specifically if we talk about like online teaching or remote teaching prior to COVID for you guys at Jeppe?
So we were lucky in that we started I like to use the word our innovation journey back in 2015, where we started to sort of realize and develop strategies in that teaching is changing globally, and we have a moral responsibility to actually prepare our students for the world that is to become. And in a lot of ways, the 21st century is a little bit uncertain. There's a lot of what is the world of work going to actually be like? And if we need to prepare our students, what does it actually mean for us as a school and for us as staff? What does that translate into what changes we need to make? What things mustn't we change? Because that's also important. I think a lot of focus has gone on the technology side, which is great, and they are amazing tools. But just like any tool, it can be used to construct or it can be used to sort of destruct. And I think it's important to sort of weave the human dynamic in here. I mean, we are an emotional species. We're a social species. And I think it's important that in whatever we do, we need to keep our eye on the ball, that human interactions are part of what makes us and what we actually strive for. So as long as we bring that into into the technology we use or the different mindsets that we bring into education, I think we'll do fine. And that's pretty much what we did. We had a very sort of slow phased approach where we would bring in different aspects of technology, different strategies, so that it would sort of develop slowly, and we can evaluate and we can sort of see what's working, what's not working, what needs to change, what needs to adapt. And so that when COVID did hit, we were actually in a very secure, strong space to actually switch into what's been termed online or distance learning. There's different terms that have been bandied about. But we were lucky in that we had those foundations built and made. And I must actually take my hat off to the staff at Jeppe. They have been absolutely phenomenal. They've adapted, they've bought into the challenge, they've made the changes, and they've kept that human touch, which is important. I mean, we are a Google for Education school, so we use G Suite as our primary product, as it were. But we use the tools, but it's about still having that contact with your students. And also we had online staff meetings. We had sort of culturals. So I run an astronomy club at the school. So we still met online. We still had our cultural things. So we still have those human interactions, as it were. But to go more specifically to your actual question, it was a slow approach, but it was a more secure approach. There were foundations, there were fundamentals put in, there was support at a PD level put into place. We ran a couple of boot camps, as it were, to get teachers certified, just to sort of recognize the effort that they're putting in. But I think it's also important to note is that if you're going to use these things, it must add value. And I think that's part of the idea of what innovation is, not change for change's sake, but change by adding value. If you're going to change something, how is it going to be of benefit? And I suppose if I'm going to use a buzzword here, how is it going to promote 21st century skills, the 4 C's, for instance? If you can bring, I'm unashamedly a big fan of the 4 C's. So if in your lessons, and it can be completely devoid of technology, but if you're bringing in the mindset of being collaborative, being creative, critical thinking, or bringing in different ways of communication, then you're providing the skills your students need for the 21st century.
Yeah, no, you mentioned so many wonderful things, but I want to take us back to the fact that your school already started in 2015 and changing the mindset and allowing teachers to start getting used to incorporating this from an organizational point of view. And I've been saying this a lot lately, is that we've been preaching the incorporation of online technologies in education for 10, 15 years already. And it's not like everybody just jumped on the bandwagon, but it's like when COVID hit, it showed us the necessity. It accelerated this need for us to move more into an online space. But you guys already having the 4.5 years worth of professional development from an organizational point of view was extremely well done on your behalf. Did you start at Jeppe in 2015, or where did the driving force for this come from?
So full disclosure, I'm actually an old boy of the school too. I can't seem to leave the place. Okay. But I started teaching in 2006. So I was a history teacher, as it were, and still teach history. But from about 2012, we had an academic exchange program with a school in the States, where we took students over and we started to actually see how things were happening there. And then we realized, there's eventually going to be a need where if we want to have our students, especially not just at our school, but across South Africa, to be able to compete and flourish on the global stage and have access to the same skills, we need to maybe start thinking about how we need to adapt our lessons. And I use the word adapt, not necessarily change, because some people are doing amazing things, devoid of technology, with technology, just their interactions. And that's why, going back to what I said earlier on, what things we need to keep as well as what things need to change. So I'd probably sum that up as adapting. And then, so I started to experiment a little bit in the classroom with our headmaster's permission, just to try and see how things sort of work. Went to a couple of conferences. And then in 2015, sort of flourished into the role that I have now, but maybe a more cautious approach, but an approach where there's buy-in from the staff, there's the support that the staff need, there's approach that it's adding value, but I think more importantly, not losing sight of who we are and what we want to instill outside of the curriculum. Every school has their sort of, I'd say, their soul, their ethos, their sort of aspect that they want to promote. And so if it's adding value and it's still keeping in what's important to keep, then that's where our journey started. And that's sort of the the short version of how I sort of got to where I was in 2015.
But now you mentioned so many interesting things here. First of all, that you're an old boy of the school is not something to throw away. I mean, you are ingrained in the ethos and the culture of the school because you're a product of it. And then did you start after your studies? Did you start teaching at JP immediately?
No. Actually, there was about an 8-year gap.
Okay.
Worked at an NGO. I did my master's in international relations, and was sort of being the typical university student, as it were, trying to learn and find one's feet. On a side note, I actually used to run a Boy Scout troop, and was sort of involved with the youth and everything. And then I can only describe it as I had an epiphany, and I thought, being involved in the youth and guidance and helping to promote and make a better world. That's why I suppose a true teacher had a vocation, sort of had a calling to it. You want to make a difference. And so then in 2006, I was at school. Partly because I also needed a job, I needed money, but that's a side issue.
that helps. That's an added benefit. But the fact that you could go back and teach at your own school. But now the other thing, two things that you mentioned, is that with the principal's permission, you started to experiment in your classroom. Now that's very interesting because there aren't many, I would say, forward-thinking principals that would just allow teachers, to experiment. Just like, well, you know what, go wild, see what you can do. What was that relationship like with your principal?
Oh no, he was Mr. Dempsey. Yes, and we got a new principal now, Mr. Jackson, who's also awesome. But it was a person by the name Mr. Dempsey. We had a really good relationship and sort of understood where we're coming and saw the need that education is evolving, and there are going to be challenges and there are going to be opportunities. But I think it must also said it's the sort of experiments in it were sort of done in a way to add value. You can't. I mean, it's important to experiment and see where things go, but I think it's always important to sort of stand back a bit and think, what is it that I want to achieve? What I want to find out? What is it going to possibly do? You obviously mustn't do anything that's going to obviously disenfranchise, sort of hurt a student. It has to be done in a thoughtful, pedagogical manner. Okay, I've got this, I want to try it out. And I think it's important to also have those conversations with your students. We're going to try something new. We're going to see how it works and how it doesn't work. And I think that's also important going forward. I mean, one of the skills students are going to need in the 21st century is the ability to take calculated risks and be willing to fail and get ourselves up. And if we want this skill to be imparted on our students, I think if we can see that we can replicate that in a safe and thought-driven process in the classroom, then that goes so much better, because then students can see that positive behavior and thought process being emulated, and so they can make changes. I mean, the old adage of sort of using Edison, where he said, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, Sam, how does it feel that X number of times you failed until you made a light bulb? He says, well, no, I found out so many X ways how not to make a light bulb, which goes to the mindset aspect. Having an open mindset, being willing to try things new, trying to see how it works, but at the same time, not just try something without any thought. I think that's one thing that we've done quite right at Jeppe, is give it a thought. Let's evaluate. Let's not sit on it forever, because that can also get you stuck. But give it a go and see how it works. How is it going to add value, and give it a go.
Yeah. And I think the important thing here is that it's well thought through. It's not just willy-nilly you're getting into the classroom, wow, let's try something. It's that in true action research type of approach, you go like, okay, I've got an idea of how I can improve my pedagogy, how I can improve my practice. Let's try the following, and then actually, see what the response is, whether it is like formally collecting data, or informally just knowing what the responses are. Teachers have got that intuitive nature of knowing this is working better than the things I've tried in the past. And the thing that you mentioned, that, having that open discussion with the kids, saying, I've got no idea how this is going to turn out, but let's give it a go. It's much better than me just regurgitating the old boring ways of teaching. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Let's keep on, and this is such a used term, let's keep failing forward.
Yeah, no, but just to go back to something you said, because you mentioned the term action research. I was thinking about using it just now, but since you brought it up, I am a fan of action research, and it's actually something I'm using in the master's degree I'm studying at the moment. But there's a lot of value in that, because it gives you, it allows you to sit back and think, what is it I want to achieve? How do I want to achieve it? And then you've got measurable data afterwards. But I mean, for your listeners on the podcast, if you haven't heard that term before, I'd really encourage you to sort of look it up and see how it is. Your teaching, as it were, if you try and emulate a model of using action research.
I think that's something that's missing from a lot of our classrooms, is that teachers are not doing enough research. I think there's this negativity associated to the word, that when you hear that you have to do research, you get those backflashes to either your fourth year project, your honors project, or those of you that are continuing with your master's and PhD. You're getting those backflashes, and the I almost want to say that little call up your maag, that thing in your stomach that made you feel like, ooh, this isn't fun. Because when you studied, it was, you kind of almost did it for marks, and it was difficult. But now something like action research can really improve your practice. And instead of just, you get more informal types of action research and the more formal types. But our teachers, we really need to start focusing on collecting data and understanding and analyzing our data to see whether this is a better experience or whether it isn't. And that's the kind of things you get when you start studying a bit further, and you don't only stick with your degree, but you go on to an honors or a master's level that teaches you a bit more of that research angle to your teaching that we don't necessarily have in our country, that other countries like Finland, for instance, when I visited there, the teachers like almost automatically just have this willingness to do research. If I can add a quick story here, one of the teachers there, he's teaching mathematics to primary school kids. I think probably trying to remember the exact grade now, but I think it's grade 6s. And his whole question was, why can't I let children answer a math test together? Why can't they be tested in pairs? Which is a notion that would freak a lot of people out, because when we test individuals. And he said, well, let me make it an action research project. Let's see what comes out of it. What's the benefits? What's the negatives? And his results was amazing, and he actually published it in one of the journals there, which I think is such a culture that we need to get into in our country.
Yeah, no, and also I agree completely, but also not to put anybody off here. I mean, your action research can be as simple as going to a colleague and asking, "Can I sit in your class and just observe your lesson and take something from that?" It doesn't have to be a full-on 5-page thesis, as it were. But I mean, it's great if it evolves into something like that. But find something that is comfortable for you. I mean, innovation or sort of open-mindedness really can be as simple as just starting the journey and either inviting someone into your class and, hey, give me some critical feedback. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Or ask to go to somebody else's classroom that you is doing something. Can I just sit and can observe? And it doesn't even have to be your subject, because believe it or not, the whole idea of teaching or having the pedagogy are skills across the board, regardless of the particular nature of that. And that in itself will actually give you new ideas and sort of plant that seed to see where it can and can't grow. But as you say, if you want to go down that road and sort of have a look, and if maybe your principal's a little bit unsure and you want to just put like a proposal together, then you can use action research templates for that to sort of put it across and see where it takes you from there.
Yeah, you make a very valid point. Sometimes the best professional development you can have is with the teacher next door. No need to go for these fancy workshops and have to pay thousands of rands to attend these things. Of course, it's good. I think my business thrives on that, by the way. Don't stop doing that. I would like to earn some money out of that. So please do keep on doing workshops. But sometimes the best professional development lies with your colleague. We should open our classroom doors and invite our colleagues in. We should have that culture in a school, and it does come from management a bit, that we embrace the fact that, we all don't know everything, and that we can learn from each other.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So, Robert, tell me what then happened as COVID hit with your school? How did you guys approach it? Take me back to that first week when I almost said when the principal, Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, when he said that the schools are going to close. How did you guys deal with that?
So we sort of had a feeling and started to do some sort of pre-planning as an exec. Sort of, there's a chance this could be, what could we do? So we had some plans in place that we sort of realized that it's not going to close necessarily immediately, but there's going to be a lead-up phase. And there was those few days before schools actually closed. So what we did is social distancing included and everything like that. I started to do a few practical sessions on how to do video recording, how to use our system, which is Google Classroom, and a whole lot of things. Just helping teachers to fine-tune some skills. We had some new teachers who came in, getting them up to speed, and just giving sort of the confidence for teachers. This is what you can do. This is how it can be done. And sort of, to a degree, this is what we expected. We're still going to continue to teach online, and we have to make sure that the recordings are available, because not all our students have access to Wi-Fi, or they had limited devices. So if a student could only watch a lesson at home once the parent's laptop was available, we need to be able to record our lessons. So a lot of time in those few days leading up to the lockdown was just getting the staff okay on how to store it, where to store it, how to share it, what are the sharing rights. A lot of staff knew it, but it was just a case of just fine-tuning those aspects. And then when lockdown happened, it was just before the first term holidays for the public schools. And then we started our online learning platform when term 2 was supposed to have started. We also developed a student portal where we had all relevant information for parents, for students, what's to be expected, how things are going to work, and also how to sign into your school account. So because we were in our phased approach, we had only actually got 3 grades fully online out of the 5. But I mean, I might have said, no, but you've got to sign in with your school account maybe 10 gazillion times for the first 2 weeks. But because of, I think, the nature of adapting and learning, the other 2 grades fell into place quite quickly, and we were able to then carry on with learning and teaching, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous, depending on the personal circumstances of the students.
Okay, so you mentioned this thing about the fact that you had 3 grades on online teaching already, and 2 other grades that you didn't. So at least you guys were probably, I want to say, like 300% ahead of most schools where you've already started with the process, that your teachers were already familiar with what is expected. It was just a case of getting everybody on board. Let's pull the team in. Let's make sure that everybody is comfortable with how they're going to. You guys had a plan and could roll that out to the rest of the grades, where our other schools were like just dumped into the deep end and had to do what we call now emergency teaching.
No, true. I mean, we were in a very fortunate position in that we could actually do that. But I think it's sort of highlight. I mean, pandemic and sort of COVID aside, I think and maybe heightened because of the COVID and the pandemic, that there's this idea that we need to look at how education is changing and evolving, and sort of adapt our policies and our procedures to that. And it doesn't. I mean, in the COVID sense, it's not just the teaching and learning, but starting a lesson. How is everyone? How are you doing? Are things okay? That sort of human dynamic. While the staff members online, just letting the students have a chat with each other. How you doing? Haven't seen you. Are you okay? And just bringing in that sort of human dynamics. Still continuing our culture aspects online. Obviously, sports was sort of different in that. But then we also had our assemblies online, where our headmaster would do an assembly once a week, and we'd speak to the boys and keep them up to date and let them know how things are happening and what's going on. So we are so yes. We had a plan. We were very lucky in that we had the basics on there. But I think going forward, I think the value is of using these tools is not necessarily COVID and pandemic specific, but in the nature that the world of work and how education is evolving needs to move down this road when it's necessary, not necessarily change everything at the cost of what's important, but make the changes when necessary.
So that's the important thing for me here is Your title at the school is Director of Innovation. And it's not like we're going to innovate when there is a crisis. It's being on top of the game, being at the forefront of what's the latest changes in education, and is it valuable to incorporate that in the classroom? So I feel when it comes to innovation that we know that one of the traits of the 21st century, and these buzzwords are being thrown around a hell of a lot, but one of the traits of the 21st century is that we're living in an ever-changing world. Things can change on the drop of a pin, drop of a hat. I got my idioms wrong there, but it can change very quickly. And if you're not in a culture of innovation, it's going to take you a long time to adapt.
Correct, and that's a whole mindset thing. I mean, one of the things we've actually done is we've brought in to our grade 9s a subject called 21st Century Skills, and it's taught during the day, timetabled. It's not examinable, but it's exposing our learners to a couple of things, like password protection, knowing about your digital footprints, digital citizenship, how to behave online, how to use social media effectively, how to do a bit of coding, how to create a online CV, building a website, and all those other type of things, and then bringing in the 4 C's again, so that they have these real world important skills that are maybe perhaps separate to the curriculum, but they have a space that they can learn how to do these things. But more importantly, our other staff members, when they can, and encouraging to incorporate at least one of the 4 C's in their lesson. For every other C they can incorporate in the lesson, great, power to you for doing it. But if you can bring in something that you can have the thought process, and then promotes that idea of innovation and adaptability.
Absolutely. If I just have a look at because remember, it's a framework, the 4 C's, or whether you go the 6 C's or the 5 E's, right? All of these things are heuristics. These are frameworks, ways in which we can structure learning. We can structure the way that we want to implement teaching. The fact is, it comes down to relevance. How relevant is the content that you're teaching for this learner? Not only how relevant is it for them now, how relevant will it be for them in the future, given the idea that if our kids are, let's say they're in grade 9, they're 15 years old, they most likely have another 100, 120 years of life ahead of them.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. There's an excellent book, the author's names escape me, but called The 100-Year Life, done by economics professors, and they sort of highlight how the world is going to change. And it used to have like a three-phase life of learning, work, and retirement. But now you have an extra layer of learning and retirement in it. And how are you going to make your life fulfilled? Going back to what is the human dynamic, and and how to learn and sort of unlearn. I think that's where the key things of adaptability and 21st century skills come in, because there used to be a saying, a jack of all trades and a master of none. I think that's sort of changing, because you can always learn something. You want to sort of be a jack of all trades, know a little bit of everything, so that you can learn particular skills and become a master at different points, but being willing to learn and unlearn as your life progresses, and giving you those skills for how things. I mean, I'll use a short analogy here. I mean, if you look at Elon Musk and self-driving cars and the fact that he's bringing out his trucks, I mean, in the United States, one of the sort of largest unskilled employment groups is the male truck driver. Now, if you bring in that, and they haven't had the skills to actually relearn new skills and go into a different form of employment, when they bring in self-driving trucks, what does that mean for their employability? But if you've been taught how to learn new things and how to adapt and make changes, then you are in a better space. And I think that's where our moral obligation as educators comes in, is that giving them the skills. Yes, the content's important. Yes, it has relevance. It makes you understand the world. But a word I like using a lot is, but how are you teaching beyond the curriculum? How are you going that extra step? Because that is where the true magic in education happens.
Yeah. Look, you can't teach skills in a vacuum. It's not like you're going to teach collaboration and, okay, come on, guys, we're going to collaborate. There needs to be a substrate. There needs to be something that you're all going to collaborate on. And that is the content that needs to be relevant. It can't just be a bit irrelevant, but that's what they need to collaborate on and learn the collaboration skill. you brought up the point that there is this debate about, should you go into depth, should you specialize, or should you be more of a generalist and know a great width about different things. And I personally believe there needs to be a balance. You need to have a niche that's going to make you more knowledgeable about the specific thing, because you are interested in it, you are good at it, and that's the one thing that you do very well. And that's probably where you're also going to make your money from. But if you don't have the context that's created by knowing the other, I almost want to say superficial, but the more general things, that context is going to allow you to be better at the thing that you specialize in. And that doesn't mean that you only specialize in one thing for your entire life. It just means you start getting a more of a niche that can be transferable into others.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that we're not saying don't specialize, but I think what's important here is the ability to adapt and change and follow a new path when and if needed.
And if our teachers don't model that in the classroom, our kids are never going to be exposed to ways in which you adapt. And you rightfully said, like, let's be open with our kids and saying, right, things have changed. Let's see how we're going to go about that.
Correct.
So this brings me to the part that we want to talk about now, because I think we've dealt with the director of innovation at Jeppe, but let's talk about your specific teaching, because it's that mindset of yours that's going to spill out. You at the Schoolscape IT were supposed to talk about Google Tour Builder and storytelling. What is your fascination with storytelling?
Yes, so I'm sort of harping back a bit here, but the whole idea of us as a species, I mean, we're a species who loves a good story, whether it's paying for overpriced popcorn to go to the movies, or whether it's binge watching a couple of episodes on Netflix. Stories are things we are fascinated with. And personally, in my case, if you can make your lesson a story or have a narrative, you can draw your students in. And they can then also learn from it, because you're appealing to a fundamental element of what it is to be human. The ability to tell a story and to learn. Yes, it's important to your maths equations and do these type of things, but if you can make it a narrative, if you can make it a story, then you draw your students in. And what's important for that, I think it's also important to know that if you see your students are engaged, you get more invested, and therefore it's a positive circle. So obviously teaching history is teaching about things in the past. But I think what's important to sort of know, and I'm being completely biased here because I absolutely love history, is that, it's important to know the context and the aspects of what's happening in history. But I think the real skill that history gives you is the ability to understand and then communicate that understanding. And that comes with the level of skills you can apply outside of the French Revolution or the Mifangane, or whatever the case might be. You're having skills that you can use outside of the classroom at a later stage. But with history, as it were, where you've got to do source work analysis and you have to write argumentative essays, once again, it's either understanding the story or what's being said in the source work, or it's telling a story in writing the essay, convincing somebody about the point that you want to actually put across. And I think, to sort of write a good story, one has to hear a good story, because then you can share that going on. And it's not just what's being said, but also how it's being said, how it's being being understood, and also sometimes to add context. You made the point earlier on that things can't happen in a vacuum. But sometimes you see students where you're now going on a new topic and there is no fundamental foundation in it. And now, an example is when I had to teach Arab-Israeli nationalism in grade 11 history. And we went straight in from the Balfour Declaration. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of terms here that are content specific, but for a lot of my students, there was no background, no understanding. So I had to actually look for a way to give them context, to actually give them background about the rise of Islam, and giving them, and also teaching myself in the process too, and also about the Jewish diaspora with the Jewish revolt and Emperor Vespasian and all that going backwards. So the tool I was going to use in the Schoolscape IT was using Google Tour Builder, where you take your stories. Things in history happen in geographical places, And so this allows you to use Google Earth and create a story, create a narrative, a journey, as it were, from giving them background to understand why there is tension in the Middle East and how things actually come together. And that was where I learned this tool, which is absolutely amazing to actually use. And I've used it in a lot of other subjects going forward. In fact, we even used it as an assessment in one of our geography classes, where they had to use it to actually find erosion patterns and actually build it like a digital project, as it were.
So for our colleagues that haven't used Google Earth or Google Tour Builder, maybe explain to us like what that is.
So in its simplest term, Tour Builder is almost like a presentation software, like PowerPoint or Google Slides or Zoom, as it were. But instead of having slides, you have locations. And then you can build stories, insert multimedia around those locations. And then you can actually fly around the globe. This happened at this place, this happened at that place. And you can immerse yourself into appropriate media or stories or videos or links to articles, or if you want to put a small assignment in using a Google form, for instance. Okay, what have you learned so far in the journey? Tell me the story back. What have you learned about the sort of content, as it were? But I mean, talking about adaptability and that, in preparation for today, Google announced that they actually going to be retiring Tour Builder, and they're moving all of it into Google Earth, but in their browser version. So here's me having to adapt and change to how things actually work on the fly. And I think that sort of speaks to the fact that innovation is a journey. It's not a destination. It's keeping that mindset open all the time.
And the nice thing is, of course, you need to adapt, but it's not like they're throwing away all of the functionality. Yeah. They're going to take what transferring that onto something that people are using for, I almost want to say, for fun and for navigation, putting it into Google Earth, and then you can use that. And what I love about this is, prior to COVID, people could travel. If you had the resources, you could take kids on an excursion or on a tour. You could take them to the actual sites. Now, that's not the case. We're not going to travel for a long while. Looking at the way the economy is, people won't be able to afford to travel. We can now go on these virtual tours to actually situate our kids as best as we can. Look, first prize would be to actually go to the place, but you can't also go everywhere. Here, you can contextually put them in the geographical space and show them what they wouldn't have been able to see if they didn't have the resources.
Yeah, no, exactly. Also part of it, a lot of what we teach and also understanding, the expense involved in field trips and how difficult it sort of is. Even before COVID, it was being punted as like an online field trip. And it can be used for any subject. We've had teachers who've used the idea of using geometry and looking at, pyramids and triangle structures in Egypt and Central America. So taking ideas of geometry and applying it to real world aspects, measuring the Great Wall of China, mathematical concepts that at first you think, well, how am I going to use geography? Yeah, but there are ways and means. Teaching English and sort of looking at Macbeth and how far, Bernafray Wood is, and that's and going into Google Earth and focusing onto Scotland. He has Dunsinane Wood, he has this, there are always practicabilities. To use another example, it's like on business studies, where you need to have a look at the shipping lanes and how far things need to travel and what the costs are involved in. And there are applications everywhere in this, which is amazing, and it can be used in virtually every single subject, or at least in components of subjects.
Yeah, and that's where the art of teaching comes from, is to know, okay, I've got this tool, I've learned what this tool can do. How can I now implement this in my specific subject or in my specific topic? If I have to think, I'm a life sciences teacher, if I have to teach biogeography, like where do certain species live, or migration patterns of certain birds or bats, I'd be able to visualize that using Google Tour Builder, or in this case now Google Earth, be able to showcase in real time, but be able to show the kids, this is what it actually looks like. This is the actual distance. And it becomes more concrete than them just sitting there and having to picture in their mind. And the concepts really can get lost.
Yeah, no, and also giving perspective. I mean, if I go to grade 10 history syllabus and we're talking about the Spanish conquest of South America and having a look at the distance involved and the terrain and all that, it helps provide context to certain things that are discussed in that actual topic without having the expense of actually having to go there. Don't get me wrong, first prize is if you're lucky enough and you're able to go to places, that's fine. But those are luxuries, I think, in any part of the world. But you know, if you've got a tool that can help enhance your education, then use it where you can.
Okay, so we always have this thing at the end of our episodes where we design a lesson together, impromptu. I've got zero idea of which subjects our audience are going to choose and in which school phase they want us to do that. I forgot at the start of the episode to ask our audience to vote, but it's cool because it's becoming a little bit of a culture that if somebody attends our session live, they immediately go down into the polls and they vote. So our subjects is life orientation and history. We have to take those two and combine them, life orientation and history, and we have to implement that in the FET phase, so grade 10 to grade 12 curriculum, history and life orientation. I'm so glad we've got a history buff with us that's going to assist. So the two of us are going to take history as a subject, life orientation as a subject, and then combine it in a lesson. So Robert, you being a history teacher, are you teaching grade 10 to 12?
Currently teaching grade 8, 10, and 11.
Okay, great. So let's use the 10 and 11 curriculum. What is there in the grade 10 and 11 history curriculum that you think overlaps quite well with life orientation?
Off the top of my head is something that we just currently finished, and that is the role of Moseswe in the Basotho nation in changes in Southern Africa from 1750, if I use the whole technical term. In that, you know, on the geographical side, we could look at how Moseswe used the sort of landscape of the Maluti and Drakensberg mountains to his advantage to keep his people safe and everything, but also looking at his personality, how he dealt with people, welcoming in refugees, and then his understanding of what it is to be a person and how to treat people, which I suppose links in some way of life orientation, as it were. I mean, I don't think there are many people like Moseswe who actually played a really good strategy. I mean, a part of it, even today, if I had to really simplify it, is that you have Lesotho, completely surrounded by South Africa, is independent. And this all goes back to what he managed to do by understanding human nature, but at the same time, understanding what assets he has. And that is on, you know, not just his military skills, his diplomatic skills, but also knowing how to use the topography that he had around him with the Malutis and the Drakensberg.
So it's extremely valuable to look at it from a leadership perspective, and life orientation. We deal a lot with leadership as well. But if I'm thinking, if we approach this lesson a bit more from almost like a project-based or inquiry-based type of point of view, we can start off with a driving question that comes from geography, where you show South Africa and you have these two independent states that's like right in our borders, where we've got Swaziland and we've got Lesotho as two countries. And we can start off with a driving question. Why isn't Lesotho a province in South Africa? Or why is Lesotho a state, an independent state?
Yeah, I mean, also so in a history essay that we actually got coming up, it's a case of how did Moseswe preserve the kingdom of Basotho as an independent nation, you know, and that brings in aspects of topography and his leadership styles, which is important. I mean, to sort of go back, I mean, history is the story of us as a species. And obviously there's bias and things are written by the victor. But at the end of the day, historical events are driven by the people who are in charge, and the people who are in charge are driven by their emotions and what actions they take. So there's an important lesson there for everyone, and also a link into this assignment we'll try and pull off now.
Yeah, excellent. So I personally don't know a lot about Lesotho or Mashweshwe whatsoever.
It's a beautiful country.
And I definitely, I mean, it's closer to go there than any other country. I mean, so should make a plan to go there. And apparently also, and please excuse my ignorance, but during the winter, the snowfall there is amazing.
Yeah, so, I pre-COVID used to go there a lot. I actually like hiking, and the mountains are sort of beautiful. But yeah, there's the closest ski resort to sort of Joburg there, and in winter, and you know, South Africans are sort of up on the Highveld here, maybe a little bit more in the Eastern Cape, and then they get more snow than us. But you know, it's 8 years ago since it last snowed up here in Joburg, so I'm missing.
Exactly. So that already just shows us like snow isn't really related to Africa, and having a ski resort in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa especially, is something that's weird. But the point I wanted to make earlier is the fact that South Africa is such a diverse country, and we've got all these tribes. They didn't just came here and now we've got certain tribes in certain parts in Africa. There's a story behind where the tribes were and how they interacted with each other. And that's something you can also showcase using something like Google Tour Builder.
Yeah, no, exactly. Across the board. And you say, if you can enhance the narrative, help promote understanding and getting an idea of how landscape is important to cultural identity and where things are. It also it gives you a better approach to, as you say, going back to what I said earlier on, just to understand and then communicate that understanding appropriately. But I say I'm using a lot of his history terms here, so unashamedly pro history. Every subject is important, including history.
Every subject is important. Some are just more important than others.
Everyone's important. I just have a major preference for history.
But history is like the ultimate storytelling subject. And if we can borrow that from history and start incorporating that into our other subjects, that's why I'm such a fan of integrated teaching. And you don't just like stick in your different silos, but you can bring in the skills from one subject into the other.
Correct. Exactly.
So I neglected, we've got about 10 minutes left. Typically, I ask my guests a few questions, and I just jumped into our designer lesson challenge. But Robert, if you were to say, what is your superpower?
Geez, I would probably say the ability to know I don't know everything, because that opens your dialogue to find out. And so you don't make rash or emotional judgments, but knowing that you need to find out if you don't know, and sort of, are you sure, as it were.
That's an excellent superpower, and it comes with a lot of humility, because if you're not humble, you're not going to recognize that, you know what, there's a lot of things in life that I don't know. And if you're arrogant about it, you can really make a big mess of things in your life.
True.
So there's the Theunningkruger effect. I don't know whether you know about it, but
no.
The Theunningkruger effect basically says that people who start off a task think they're much better in that task than they actually are, because they don't have the full story. So once you start with a task, you think you're like the best at the task, or you can really nail this task, until you get to a point where you realize, oh crap, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. And it brings you down to your knees. The Theunningkruger effect can be shown in a graph, which like shows you, like, you've got this enthusiasm in doing something, and it just keeps on going because you're thinking that you're doing something well. And as you're getting to explore it, you start losing confidence because you're realizing, I actually don't know a lot about this concept, until you've gained enough experience in it and you start gaining that confidence again, knowing that. So that initial, I always want to say, arrogance is part of the Theunningkruger effect that helps us through getting stuff done, but can be very detrimental if you don't acknowledge that, you know what, I don't know everything. And I bet you it's probably part of your inquisitive spirit, is that thing that, what else can I get to know?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's. I mean, I think that's also part of it. I mean, I don't know everything, and if I don't know, I'll try and find out. Might watch a YouTube tutorial, or might do this, or I might ask a question. I don't personally think it's a sign of weakness at all. It shows there's a level of professionalism and finding out at the same time. I wouldn't harp too long on it either, because then it can become quite like treacle, and you get stuck in it. But find out, see, evaluate, and then make a decision and take it from there.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Be willing to talk to others and ask people. You'd be surprised. I can't ask people this. No, they don't have time. They don't have that. If somebody is truly doing some amazing stuff, they'll make time to speak to you. And to say, going back to have that risk, be willing to ask, and you'll be surprised how often that is more successful than not.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Like having that courage to just ask is going to prove a lot more fruitful than you think. We tend to put other people on this pedestal, and you think like, I'm not worthy to ask this person this question, until you actually just ask them, and the worst they can do is say no or get away.
Or later on,
Not now. Robert, the final question I have for you is, tell us a story about a super teacher in your life, a teacher that made an impact in your life.
Oh, geez, without a doubt, it was my late geography teacher, Mr. Grace, actually taught me at Jeppe. An exceptional man. I mean, for him, he taught using narrative. He taught telling a story, whether it was about population geography, or whether it's about erosion patterns or anything. It was a pleasure to listen. It was a story, and I suppose that's exactly where it sort of come through to my side, because I mean, you'd have everybody in the class, from the jocks to the academics, spellbound, just listening to the story.
Yeah, and that of course has got such a great influence on you, and your love of narrative obviously came from somewhere. I'm not saying he's the only influence, but
yeah, true.
Once you've seen a teacher doing something that worked for you, it's just natural to also incorporate that in your own teaching.
Correct, exactly, precisely.
Excellent. Robert, thank you very much for spending time with me this afternoon. I know you've also got a residence duty and stuff to get back to. It's a wild world being a teacher, but thank you for spending the time with us. Any final words you want us to leave us with?
So just so everybody know, Google Tour Builder and the project based in Google Earth, it's free. So you can't get better than that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best price ever. If people want to get hold of you, Robert, where are you on social media, or how do they get hold of you?
I'm on Twitter at Faltermeier. It's a very long name. It has got 3 vowels in a row, but the spelling, I'm sure you'll put that up. And then if you sort of need it, as it were, you can always contact the school and say, give me my email address, and take it from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much for spending time with us. Remember, if you want to be part of our live studio audience, you can just send me a WhatsApp. Send your name to +27 63 681 6410. Once again, just +27 63 681 6410, and I'll invite you to be part of these sessions. And then a great thank you to goteach.co.za for bringing us this episode. Be sure that if you're an unemployed teacher, a student teacher, or a retired teacher, go and check out goteach.co.za. Until next time, my name is Francois Nordea, and with me, I've got Robert Faltermeier, and we are Super Teachers.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thanks, Robert. We'll chat soon.
Cool.
Go well. Being a teacher is tough, especially now. That's why we need to motivate, inspire, and support each other. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Super Teachers Unite show and learn from the expert guests we have every week.